Move to the next chapter for aircraft welding. 66 terms. What is the purpose of shielding an arc weld with an inert gas? The gas prevents atmospheric oxygen and/or nitrogen from contaminating the weld. Name the 3 principal types of welding. What are some advantages when using gas-shielded arc welding? The weld is stronger, more ductile, and more corrosion resistant. Which method of welding is less likely to cause buckling or warping of thin metal sheets? Electric arc welding. What is a common method of controlling expansion when welding a joint? Place tack welds along the length of the joint. What is the effect of inadequate penetration on a weld? The weld will be weak. What is the purpose of the flux used with brazing and silver soldering? The flux cleans the base metal by removing any oxide film. What type of flame is used when torch brazing or silver soldering? A neutral flame. What must be done to a soldering iron tip to increase the amount of heat transferred from the tip to the work? The tip must be clean of all contaminants and properly tinned. What is the preferred method for welding aluminum? Tungsten inert gas welding. What type of method are used when welding magnesium? Tungsten inert gas welding. What precautions must be observed in order to weld titanium? All traces of oxygen and nitrogen must be kept away from the weld area. Describe one type of repair that could be made to a dented steel tube cluster joint. A formed steel patch plate could be welded over the damaged area. How can a soft flame be attained without reducing the heat output of the torch? Use a larger tip and adjust the gas pressure accordingly. What factors determine the amount of heat delivered by a gas welding torch? The size of the torch tip and the gas pressure. When an oxyacetylene torch is extinguished, which valve is turned off first? Turn off the acetylene gas valve first. When a gas welding project is completed, what safety precautions should be accomplished? All the valves are turned off and the gas pressure are relieved. What should be done to a heat-treated aluminum part after welded repairs are completed? The part must be reheat treated. Welding magnesium can create a serious safety hazard. What is the nature of this hazard? Magnesium burns with a very hot flame that is very hard to extinguish. What technique might be used to enable a tight-fitting inner sleeve to be inserted into a tubular repair? The inner tube could be chilled in dry ice or in a freezer while the outer tube could be heated slightly with a torch. What are the 2 fuel gases most generally used for gas welding? Oxygen and acetylene. What fuel gases are used for welding aluminum? Oxygen and hydrogen. What are 2 types of torches used in gas aluminum? Balanced pressure torches and injector torches. What color lenses are used for gas welding steel? Green or brown? What color lenses are used for gas welding aluminum? Blue. Why is it important that the pressure of the gas in an acetylene cylinder be kept low? Acetylene gas becomes unstable when it is kept under pressure of more than about 15 psi. What is the difference in the appearance of an oxidizing flame, a neutral flame, and a reducing flame produced by an oxyacetylene torch? An oxidizing flame has a pointer inner cone and the torch makes a hissing noise. A neutral flame has a rounded inner cone and there is no feather around the inner cone. What is one method of minimizing distortion when making a long butt weld? Tack weld the materials together and then complete the weld between the tacks, starting at a tack and working back toward the finished weld. What is meant by tack welding? Tack welding is the use of small welded spots to hold the material together until the final bead is run. Why must thick plates of metal be preheated before they are welded? Preheating minimizes the stresses that are caused when welding thick metal. What must be done to an aircraft structure after it has been welded while clamped in a heavy jig or fixture? It must be normalized by heating it to a uniform red heat and allowed to cool slowly in still air. Why is it important that all traces of welding flux be removed after a piece of aluminum or magnesium is welded? Welding flux is corrosive and it must be removed to keep the metal from corroding. What is the difference between brazing and welding? In brazing, the base metal is not melted but is covered with a low melting point alloy. In welding, the base metal is melted. What kind of flame should be used when gas welding aluminum? A soft, neutral oxyhydrogen flame. What is an acceptable acetylene line pressure to use when welding with an oxyacetylene rig? About 5 psi. What kind of flame should be used when gas welding stainless steel? A slightly carburizing flame. How much should the bead penetrate the material when welding two pieces of steel with a butt weld? The joint should have 100% penetration. What is meant by a soft flame? A soft flame is one that is made when the pressure of the gases are low enough that the flame does not make a noise and does not blow the puddle. What must be done to an aircraft fuel tank before it can be repaired by welding? The gasoline fumes must all be purged from the tank by running live steam through it for at least 30 minutes, by soaking it in hot water, or by filling it with nitrogen or carbon dioxide. What is another name for GTA welding? TIG welding. What type of shielding gases are used for GTA welding? Helium and argon. Why is GTA welding preferred over oxyacetylene welding for building and repairing welded steel tube aircraft structure? The heat is concentrated in the weld and does not cause as much distortion as gas welding. What are two types of electric resistance welding used in aircraft construction? Spot welding and seam welding. What determines the amount of heat that is put into a weld by an oxyacetylene torch? The size of the orifice in the torch tip. Is a heat-treated steel part normally repairable by welding? No, welding destroys the heat treatment. What is the function of the flux in brazing and soldering? The flux covers the cleaned and heated metal to keep oxygen away from it. What is the function of the inert gas used in GTA and GMA welding? The inert gas forms a shield to keep oxygen away from the weld puddle so oxides cannot form and weaken the weld. What is used as the electrode in GTA welding? A small diameter tungsten wire. What are three types of power that can be used for GTA welding? DC straight polarity, DC reverse polarity, and AC. Which type of power provides the greatest heat and deepest penetration in GTA welding? DC straight polarity. Which type of power is used for GTA welding aluminum and magnesium? DC reverse polarity. What type of repair can be used when a steel structural tube is dented to more than 1/4 of its circumference? A patch may be welded over the damage. What type of repair can be used when a steel structural tube is dented at a cluster? A patch may be welded over the damaged area with fingers extending up along each member of the cluster. What is the preferred method of splicing a new piece of tubing into a structure? An inner sleeve splice. How is the inner sleeve tube held in the structural tube until the gap is welded? It is held in place with russet welds. What is one limitation of using an outer sleeve splice in an aircraft structure? This type of splice is not suitable where it would cause in the fabric. How should the ends of an outer sleeve be cut? Cut it with a 30 degrees fish mouth. What kind of solder is recommended for soldering electrical wires? 60/40 resin core solder. What is the composition of 60/40 solder? 60% tin and 40% lead. What is the difference between soldering and brazing? Soldering is a method of joining metal parts with a molten non-ferrous alloy that melts at a temperature below 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Brazing is essentially the same, except the brazing alloy melts at a temperature higher than 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Why must acid core solder never be used on electrical wire? The acid causes the wire to corrode. What determines the strength of a soldered joint? The mechanical connection of the joint, not the solder. What type weld joint must be used to weld magnesium? Only butt welds are used to weld magnesium. Why must all flux be removed from the metal after welding magnesium? Any flux left on the metal will result in severe corrosion. What must be done in order to successfully weld titanium? The weld zone must be shielded with an inert gas such as helium or argon. What will be the result of using a torch tip that is too large or too small? If the torch tip is too large, the heat will be too great and holes may be burned in the metal. If the torch tip is too small, the heat provided may be insufficient to produce penetration to the proper depth, causing a low-strength weld. How do you determine the correct size filler rod to be used in welding? Now let's move to Chapter 5, Aircraft Fabric Covering. 45 terms. Aircraft covering fabrics are made of materials from what two sources? Organic materials and synthetic materials. How would you determine the strength requirements for fabric used to recover an aircraft? The fabric must be at least the quality and strength of the fabric used by the original manufacturer. What two types of organic fibers are used for covering aircraft? Cotton and linen. What is meant by warp, weft, and bias? Warp is the direction along the length of the fabric, weft is the direction across the fabric at right angles to the warp, and bias is the direction at 45-degree angle to the warp and weft. What is the purpose of the selvage edge on a roll of fabric? It prevents the fabric from unraveling. What identification marking is found on the selvage edge, and which direction is the warp applied? The FAAPMA stamp is found on the selvage edge and the warp is applied parallel to the line of flight. How is the fabric type and strength requirements determined for fabric-covered aircraft? The original manufacturer determined the fabric type, and the strength requirements are a function of the never exceed speed and wing loading. What types of synthetic fibers are used for covering aircraft? Fiberglass and heat-shrinkable polyester fibers. Which of the several types of fabric is unaffected by moisture and mildew? Fiberglass. What is the function or purpose of reinforcing tape? Reinforcing tape is used between the fabric and the rib stitching to prevent the lacing cord from cutting through the fabric. Where would you use surface tape? Over rib stitching and sewed seams, overlapped edges, around corners, and along leading and trailing edges. How should the edges of drainage, inspection, and ventilation holes be reinforced? With plastic, aluminum, or brass grommets. What are the principal methods used to test the condition of dough fabric? Punch testers such as the Mahler-Seibold tester and laboratory pull testing. Fabric is considered unworthy when it has deteriorated to what percentage of its original strength? Less than 70%. How should a structure that will be covered with doped fabric be prepared following inspection and prior to covering? Treat it with a protective coating of paint or varnish as appropriate. What is the principal advantage of the envelope method for covering wings? Almost all the seams are machine sewed by the envelope supplier. What is a tie-off knot? A standard, modified seam knot used on all stitches except the starting stitch. Name 3 common types of machine sewed seams. Plain overlap, folded fell, and French fell. Where are anti-tear strips used? Underwing rib stitching when the never exceed speed is greater than 250 miles per hour. How would you determine the correct spacing for rib stitching if the original spacing was unknown? Consult the chart in AC 43-13-1B. What reference material may be used for acceptable covering methods for fabric-covered aircraft structure? AC 43-13-1B, Chapter 2. What are 3 types of fabric that can be used to cover an aircraft? Cotton fabric, polyester fabric, and glass fabric. What paperwork must be completed if an aircraft that was originally covered with grade A cotton fabric is recovered using a synthetic fabric? The covering must be done according to a supplemental type certificate, and a Form 337 must be executed stating that all materials and processes complied with the requirements of the STC. What type of rib lacing cord is recommended for attaching cotton fabric to an aircraft structure? Waxed linen cord. What is the minimum strength to which aircraft fabric is allowed to deteriorate before it is considered to be unairworthy? Fabric can deteriorate to 70% of the strength of the fabric that is required for the aircraft. How is the strength of the fabric on an aircraft structure determined? An approximate strength test can be made with an FAA-approved fabric punch tester, but the only way to know for sure that the fabric has sufficient strength is by pull testing a 1-inch wide sample of the fabric. How is polyester synthetic fabric shrunk on an aircraft structure? It is shrunk with heat from an iron or from a heated blower. Why are some portion of the structure of an aircraft dope-proof before they are covered with fabric? Dope-proofing keeps the fabric from sticking to the structure when the first coat of dope is applied. What material is used for inter-rib bracing in a fabric-covered aircraft wing? Cotton reinforcing tape. Should a sewed seam in the fabric used to cover an aircraft wing run spanwise or kerwise? Both spanwise and kerwise seams are permissible, but kerwise seams are preferred. What are 2 methods of applying the fabric to the wing of an airplane? The blanket method and the envelope method. What material is used to cover the overlapping edges of the leading edge metal to protect the fabric? Cloth tape. What are 2 methods of attaching the fabric to the aircraft structure? By sewing and with a cement. How are the wrinkles pulled out of cotton fabric? Wet the cotton with water and allow it to dry. How is polyester fabric shrunk on the aircraft structure? With heat from an iron. What type of knot is used for locking the stitches that are used for rib lacing on a fabric-covered aircraft wing? A modified seam knot. What determines the spacing of the rib lacing stitches on a fabric-covered aircraft wing? The never exceed speed of the aircraft. When is the finishing tape applied to a fabric-covered wing when it is being recovered? After the second coat of dope has dried and the nap of the fabric has been sanded off. When are drainage grommets applied when an aircraft is being recovered? They are laid into the third coat of dope at the same time the surface tape is applied. What is done to cotton and linen fabric to protect it from mildew? The first coat of dope used on cotton and linen fabric has a mildew side mixed in it. Where are drainage grommets located on a fabric-covered aircraft wing? At the lowest point in each bay. How wide should the surface tape be that is used to cover the trailing edge of an aircraft wing? 3 inches wide. Why is the surface tape used on the trailing edge of control surfaces of some airplanes notched? Since the edges of this tape face into the wind, it is possible that it could start to lift and form a very effective spoiler. What is the recommended type of repair to a fabric-covered aircraft surface when it has an L-shaped tier with each of the legs of the tier more than 14 inches long? If the never exceed speed of the aircraft is less than 150 miles per hour, a doped-on repair can be made. What type of hand sewing stitch is used when sewing in a panel of new fabric on an aircraft fabric-covered wing? A baseball stitch, locked every 8 to 10 stitches. Chapter 6: Aircraft Painting and Finishing. 58 terms. Why is butyrate dope safer to use than nitrate dope? It is much less flammable. What are the two types of dope used for fabric finishes? Cellulose nitrate and cellulose acetate butyrate. What is the appearance of a blushing paint finish? Chalky or cloudy? What finishing defect is the result of a paint room temperature that is too warm? Pinholes or blisters? What causes dope to blush? High humidity, moisture in the spray system, or application over a damped surface. What factors cause spray paint sags and runs? Inadequate surface preparation or paint sprayed on too thickly. What components or parts of the airframe must be protected from damage when using paint stripper? Windshields and windows, plastics, composites, synthetic rubber, and fabrics. What is the function of a zinc chromate or primers? Primers serve to inhibit corrosion and provide a good bond between the metal and the top coats. Name several common types of paint used on aircraft. Zinc chromate and wash primers, synthetic enamels, acrylic lacquer, and polyurethane. What is the proper thinner to use with zinc chromate primer? Toluene. What health and safety precautions must be observed when using the toxic solvents and thinners that are part of modern finishing systems? Respirators and/or masks must be worn when spraying finishes. If spray painting dust causes a surface to appear dry and rough, what are the most likely causes? Too much air pressure or the spray gun is too far from the surface being painted. What causes orange peel? Spray pressure too high, use of a thinner that dries too fast, cold temperatures, or a damp draft over the surface. What regulation governs the application of the registration numbers to aircraft registered in the United States? FAR Part 45. Other than appearance, what is another reason for touching up painted surfaces? Reduction or elimination of general corrosion problems. What references should be used to determine if a control surface must be checked and/or rebalanced after painting? The manufacturer service manual. What would be the effect if dope was used over paint or enamel? The dope tends to dissolve these material. What are the most commonly used methods of applying paint? Dipping, brushing, and spraying. What is the effect on paint finishes if too much dryer is added to the paint? The paint film will be brittle and tend to crack and peel. What paint system may be used with epoxy top coats? Any paint system in good condition. Where are the registration marks required to be placed on a fixed-wing aircraft? On a vertical tail surface or on the side of the fuselage? What is the generally required dimensions of the registration numbers on the side of a fixed-wing aircraft? 12 inches tall and 2/3 as wide as they are high. What is the regulation regarding the color of the registration marks? The color must contrast with the background and be legible. Why should wooden wing spars be finished with a transparent varnish? The transparent finish allows any decay or rot that develops in the wood to be detected. Why is retarder used in dope when the dope is being sprayed in humid conditions? The retarder slows the drying of the dope and keeps it from blushing. What is used as a protective finish for the inside of steel tubing? Hot linseed oil. What happens to an enamel when paint remover is applied to it? The enamel softens and swells so that it pulls away from the surface of the metal. What should be done to an aircraft surface that is covered with paint remover to give the remover the maximum amount of time to soak into the old finish? The surface should be covered with a piece of polyethylene sheeting such as a paint drop cloth. What will happen if dope is sprayed over an enameled surface? The thinner in the dope will penetrate the enamel surface and cause it to swell. What are the two basic types of dope that are used on fabric-covered aircraft? Nitrate dope and butyrate dope. When an aircraft is being recovered, one is fungicidal dope applied to the fabric, with the first coat of dope that is brushed into the fabric. What kind of dope is used in polyester synthetic fabric that has been heat shrunk on an aircraft structure? Non-toughening butyrate dope. Why are some portions of the structure of an aircraft dope-proof before they are covered with fabric? Dope-proofing keeps the fabrics from sticking to the structure when the first coat of dope is applied. What is meant by dope blushing and what causes it? Blushing is a condition in dope finished in which moisture from the atmosphere condenses on the surface and causes some of the cellulose to precipitate from the finish. Blushing may be caused by the temperature being too low, the humidity being too high. What can be done to remedy blushing that has formed on a dope surface that has just been sprayed? Spray a very light mist coat of a mixture of 1 part retarder to 2 parts of thinner over the blushed area. What is a rejuvenator? A slow-drying finishing material that has potent solvents and plasticizers that soften a dried surface film and restore resilience to the film. Does rejuvenator restore strength to the fabric? Not. It only restores resilience to the finish. Why is the first coat of dope brushed onto the fabric? To ensure thorough penetration and encapsulation of all of the fibers. What is the general reasons for runs and sags in a finish that is being sprayed onto a flat surface? Too much dope is being applied. The film is too thick. What is the most common cause for dope roping? The dope was improperly thinned or it was too cold. What causes pinholes in S-dope finish? Excessive atomizing air pressure on the spray gun. Why should the first coat of dope be thinned? To ensure thorough penetration and encapsulation of all of the fibers. Why is aluminum pigmented dope used on a fabric-covered aircraft? To protect the clear dope and the fabric from the harmful effects of the sun. What safety precaution must be observed when sweeping a paint room that has dry dope or lacquer overspray on the floor? The floor must be wet down with water before it is swept. Why should a fabric-covered surface be electrically grounded when dry sanding it? Dry sanding can create enough static electricity on the surface that it can cause a spark and ignite the dope fumes inside the structure. What instructions must be followed when covering and finishing an aircraft with materials specified in Supplemental Type Certificate? The instructions that are a part of the STC. What finishing materials must be used when recovering an aircraft using an STC? The finishing materials specified by the STC. How thick should a coat of wash primer be that is used on an aluminum alloy aircraft structure? It should be thin enough that it does not hide the surface of the metal. When mixing epoxy paint, should the converter be added to the resin or the resin to the converter? The converter should always be added to the resin. What type of primer is used when the maximum protection of the metal is required? Epoxy primer. What should be done to a corroded aluminum alloy surface after the corrosion has been removed by mechanical methods? The surface should be treated with a chemical conversion coating before the top coats are applied. What may be done to the surface to prevent filiform corrosion beneath the top coat? Be sure that the primer is properly and completely cured. How is the finish removed from a fiberglass aircraft component that is being repaired? The finish must be sanded off. How can a vinyl film decal be removed from an aluminum alloy surface? Place a cloth saturated with cyclohexanone. What is a cause of poor adhesion between the top coat and the fill coats on a fabric surface? Too much aluminum powder in the aluminum pigmented dope. What causes pinholes in a finish? Excessive atomizing air on the spray gun. What causes blushing in a dough finish? Too high humidity. What causes fish eyes in the finish? Localized surface contamination. Now let's move to Chapter 7, Airframe Electrical Systems. 52 terms. How is the voltage output of an alternator controlled? By controlling the voltage output of the DC exciter. What precautions should be taken to a conduit and when fittings are not used? The end of the conductor should be flared to prevent wire insulation damage. What could cause an AC electric motor to run too fast? Excessive applied voltage or shorted field windings. What tool is used to check a motor or generator armature for shorts and opens under load conditions? A growler. When using a growler, what indication will occur when a short exists between an armature segment? When a metal blade is held over the armature and a short exists in a segment, the blade will begin to vibrate and chatter. How is the output voltage of an alternator controlled? By varying the field current that excites the alternator. What instruments are used to monitor electrical system loads? Ammeters and voltmeters. How would you identify a specific wire in a wire bundle? By the identification code marked on the wire. What tool would you use to determine the size of an unmarked wire? A wire gauge. What color are the navigation lights on the wingtips? The left wingtip is red, the right is green. How many types of electrical items may cause short time and demand loads on an electrical system? Different types such as landing gear motors, radio transmitters, and flaps motors. Why would it be necessary to analyze an electrical system before increasing the load on the system? To determine that the generator capacity, wire size, and protective device capacity will not be exceeded. What factors should be considered when determining the wire size for a particular application? The system voltage, permissible voltage drop, current to be carried, wire length, and whether the load is continuous or intermittent. What is the relationship between the inside diameter of a conduit and the outside diameter of the wire bundle inside it? The conduit must be 25% larger than the wire bundle. What is the maximum number of terminal lugs that can be placed on a single terminal strip stud? 4. What is the proper length for a bonding jumper? As short as practical, but long enough to allow free movement of the component. Under what conditions must a switch be derated from its nominal rating? When used with inductive circuits, circuits with high inrush current, and with DC motors. At what point do electric motors draw the most current? When starting. Circuit breakers are designed to open before what condition occurs? Before the wire emits smoke. At what point in a circuit should be protective device located? As close to the power source as possible. What type of circuit breaker may not be used in an aircraft? An automatic resetting type. What part of an aircraft is identified by a white navigation light? The tail. What could cause an AC electric motor to run slowly? Lack of lubrication, defective wiring, or low applied voltage. What should be done when making bounding or grounding connections between dissimilar materials? Use a suitable washer so that any corrosion will occur on the washer. Prior to making a continuity check, what must be done to an electrical circuit? The power must be turned off. Why must a switch be derated if it is a circuit that supplies incandescent lamps? The high inrush current caused by the low resistance of the cold filaments requires that the switches be derated. What two things must you take into consideration when selecting the wire size to use in an aircraft electrical system installation? The current carrying capability of the wire and the voltage drop caused by the current flowing through the wire. How is a wire bundle protected from chafing where the bundle goes through a hole in a fuselage frame or bulkhead? The edges of the hole are covered with a flexible grommet and the bundle is secured to the structure with a cushion clamp. What kind of fault can be found in a generator armature with a growler? Shorted coils. Does an aircraft engine electric starter use a series or a parallel motor? A series wound motor. What kind of rectifier is used in the small DC alternators installed in most light aircraft? 6 silicon diodes arranged in a 3-phase full-wave rectifier. What kind of instrument would you use to measure very high resistance? A megometer. When is it important that aircraft electrical system wire bundles be enclosed in some type of conduit? Anytime a wire bundle is routed in an area where it is subjected to abrasion or rough handling. What size aluminum wire would be proper to replace a piece of 4-gauge copper wire? 2-gauge. For copper wire, always use a wire that is 2-gauge numbers larger. What 3 things must be synchronized before an aircraft AC generator is placed on the same bus with another AC generator? The voltage, the frequency, and phase rotation. How can the direction of rotation of the armature of a DC shunt wound electric motor be reversed? By reversing the connections to the shunt field coil with reference to the armature. Where could you find the part number of a switch in an aircraft electrical system? In the equipment table or bill of materials on the electrical circuit diagram for the aircraft. If no specific instructions are available, which way should the operating handle of an electrical switch move to turn a component on? Forward or upward? What is meant by a trip-free circuit breaker? A circuit breaker that cannot be closed while a fault exists, regardless of the position of the operating handle. What is meant by a slow-blow fuse? A fuse that will allow more current than its rating to flow for a short period of time but will open the circuit if more than its rated current continues to flow. What are 2 principles upon which circuit breakers operate? Magnetic circuit breaker open and circuit when the current creates a strong enough magnetic field. What circuit in an aircraft electrical system is not required to have a circuit protective device? The main circuit for starter motors used during starting only. What kind of clamp is used to secure a wire bundle to the aircraft structure? A cushion clamp. Why are solderless splices usually better than soldered splices in the wiring of an aircraft electrical system? Solder joints are usually stiff and vibration can harden the wire and cause it to break. Solderless splices are designed to keep the joint flexible so vibration cannot cause the wire to break. What is the main disadvantage of aluminum wire over copper wire for use in an aircraft electrical system? Aluminum wire is more brittle than copper. What size aluminum wire over copper wire for use in an aircraft electrical system? 2-gauge. Use a wire that is 2-gauge numbers larger. What is the smallest size aluminum wire that is approved for use in aircraft electrical systems? 6-gauge. What color insulator on a preinsulated solderless connector indicates that the connector is proper for a 10-gauge wire? Yellow. What size generator must be used in an aircraft electrical system if the connected electrical load is 30 amps and there is no way of monitoring the generator output? When monitoring is not practical, the total continuously electrical load must not exceed more than 80% of the rated generator output. What is meant by flashing the field of a generator? Restoring the residual magnetism to the frame of the generator. What is meant by paralleling the generators in a multi-engine aircraft? Adjusting the voltage regulators so all generators share the electrical load equality. What are the three types of voltage regulators used with aircraft generators? Vibrator type, carbon pile type, and solid type. How does the vibrator type voltage regulator maintain a constant voltage? When the voltage rises above the desired value, an electromagnetic relay opens and inserts a resistor in the generator field circuit, decreasing the field current and lowering the generator output voltage. What two components are normally housed with a vibrator voltage regulator in a single unit generator control? A current limiter and a reverse current cutout relay. Chapter 8 Hydraulic and Pneumatic Power System. 58 terms. What materials form the basis of the three types of hydraulic fluids? Vegetables, mineral, and phosphate esters. What colors denote mineral-based and phosphate ester-based hydraulic fluids? Mineral-based fluids are red and phosphate ester-based fluids are light purple. What are the results of exposing lacquers, oil-based paint, plastic resins, and vinyl compounds to phosphate ester-based hydraulic fluid? The materials will be damaged and/or softened, or the paint will peel. Name several sources used to develop hydraulic pressure. Hand pumps, engine-driven pumps, and electrically driven pumps. What would cause the bypass valve in a hydraulic filter to open and allow unfiltered fluid to circulate in the system? A clogged filter element. Describe several methods of pressurizing a hydraulic reservoir. Engine bleed air, system pressure acting on a small piston in the reservoir using variable displacement hydraulic pumps. What feature prevents engine damage if an engine-driven hydraulic pump seizes or is overloaded? A shear section in the pump drive shaft will break, disconnecting the pump from the engine. Describe the purpose of a pressure relief valve. Pressure relief valves limit the maximum pressure produced by the pump, thereby preventing failures on the system components. Engine-driven pumps deliver the output fluid flow in what two forms? As a constant volume or a variable volume. Describe the operation of a gear-type pump. Two meshed gears driven by a power source rotate in a housing. Inlet fluid is carried around the outside the gears and delivered to the outlet side as the gears rotate. Describe the purpose of the pressure regulator. Pressure regulators manage the output of the pump to maintain system pressure. What is the device that is used in some systems to supplement the pump output during periods of high demand? An accumulator. What are the three different types of accumulators? Piston, diaphragm, and bladder. What safety precautions must be taken prior to disassembling an accumulator? Release all of the air or preload. When a hydraulic unit is replaced, what precautions should be taken to avoid contamination of the system? All lines should be capped or plugged immediately after they are disconnected. What type of components or systems are pneumatically operated in some aircraft? Landing gear, brakes, flaps, and other mechanical actuators. Name several sources of pneumatic power. Storage bottles, engine bleed air, engine-driven compressors or vane-type pumps. What happens to excess pressure in a pneumatic system? A relief valve vents it overboard. What is the function of a restrictor in a pneumatic system? To control the rate of flow of the airflow. What are the reasons for periodically purging a pneumatic system? To remove moisture and contaminants. Why do most engine-driven hydraulic pumps have a shear section in their drive couplings? If the pump should seize, the shear section will break, disconnecting the pump from the engine and preventing further damage. What is the purpose of an orifice check valve in an aircraft hydraulic system? An orifice check valve allows full flow of fluid in one direction through the valve but restricts the flow in the opposite direction. What is the source of the compressed air that is used in a medium-pressure pneumatic system on a turbine engine-powered aircraft? This air is normally bled from one of the stages of the engine compressor. Why do most high-pressure pneumatic systems include a moisture separator? The moisture separators remove this water before it can freeze and block the system. What is the difference between an open center selector valve and a closed center selector valve? Open center selector valves are installed in series with each other and the closed center selector valves are installed in parallel with each other and they direct fluid under pressure to one side of the actuator to the system return manifold. Why do some hydraulic pressure gauges have a snubber installed between them and the hydraulic pump? This snubber keeps the gauge from fluctuating. What kind of filter is a micronic filter? A filter with a special paper element. What is a double-action pump? A pump that delivers fluid with the movement of the pump handle in both directions. What does an unloading valve do in a hydraulic system? The unloading valve or pressure regulator controls system pressure by shifting the pump outlet fluid from the pressurized system back into the reservoir when the system pressure is high enough. What is the purpose of accumulator in an aircraft hydraulic system? The accumulator holds pressure on the hydraulic fluid in the system. Where are line disconnect fittings normally located in an aircraft hydraulic system? Normally in the lines that connected the engine-driven pump to the aircraft hydraulic system. What is a single-action hydraulic actuating cylinder? A linear actuating cylinder that uses hydraulic fluid under pressure to move the piston in only one direction. What is a sintered metal hydraulic filter? A surface filter whose element is made of powdered metal fused under heat and pressure. What is the purpose of the differential pressure indicator on a hydraulic filter? It indicates when the filter is clogged and fluid is bypassing the filter element. What is a Cuno filter? An edge filter made of a stack of thin metal discs separated by thin scraper blades. Is a chevron seal a one-way or a two-way seal? A one-way seal. To which side of a chevron seal should the pressure be applied? To the open side. Is an O-ring seal a one-way seal? A two-way seal. How can you be sure of getting an O-ring made of the correct material for a specific hydraulic component? The O-ring must have the correct part number and it must have been obtained from a reputable source. On which side of an O-ring should the backup ring be placed? On the side away from the source of pressure. What should be done to the sharp edges of threads and actuator pistons when installing O-rings? The sharp edges should be covered with paper. What are the two basic differences between a hydraulic and pneumatic system? The fluid in a pneumatic system is compressible and that used in a hydraulic system is incompressible. What are two functions of a low-pressure pneumatic system in an aircraft? To operate the gyros in flight instruments and to inflate pneumatic de-icer boots. What type of pump is used in a low-pressure pneumatic system? A vane-type pump. Why do high-altitude aircraft that have pneumatic gyro instruments use pressure-actuated instruments rather than vacuum-actuated instruments? At high altitude there is not enough air mass to drive the gyros at the required speed. What effect would a dirty air filter have on the operation of pneumatic gyro instruments? The instrument would not get enough air to spin up to the required speed. Of what material are the vanes in a dry-type air pump made? Carbon. What kind of device is used to control the speed of movement of the piston in a pneumatic actuator? A variable orifice. What is the purpose of the moisture separator in a high-pressure pneumatic system? The separator collects moisture from the air and holds it on a baffle until the system is shut down. What are two types of filters that are used in aircraft pneumatic system? Micronic type and screen type. Does the main hydraulic pump take its fluid from the bottom of the reservoir or from a standpipe? The main pump normally takes its fluid from a standpipe while the emergency pump takes its fluid from the bottom of the reservoir. Why are some hydraulic reservoirs pressurized? Pressurization ensures that fluid will be supplied to the inlet of the pumps at high altitude where there is not enough atmospheric pressure to do this. What are two ways aircraft hydraulic reservoirs may be pressurized? By an aspirator in the fluid return line or by bleed air from one of the engine compressors. What is used to flush a hydraulic system that uses Skydroll hydraulic fluid? Trichloroethylene or the solvent recommended by the aircraft manufacturer. What is used to flush a hydraulic system that uses mineral-based hydraulic fluid? Naphtha, Varsol or Stoddard solvent. Where can you find the type of hydraulic fluid required for a particular aircraft? In the maintenance manual for the aircraft, this information is also on a placard on the system reservoir. What is used to remove phosphate ester-based hydraulic fluid from aircraft tires? Soap and water. How can you be sure that a replacement seal in a hydraulic component is compatible with the fluid used in the system? Use only the seal identified by part number that is specified in the component maintenance manual. Let's move to Chapter 9 Aircraft Landing Gear Systems.